Hello and welcome back to the Shutter Sports Refresh. I'm your host, Finn Noel, bringing you all of the biggest news in sports from the past week. Now, let's get started. We'll start off with some basketball news as we are 60 games into the NBA regular season and the playoffs are just over a month away. Let's give you a bit of a breakdown on the playoff picture. Now, at this point, no team has mathematically been eliminated from playoff contention, but there are a few teams that are just about on the brink. Those teams being the Utah Jazz, New Orleans Pelicans, San Antonio Spurs, Washington Wizards, Charlotte Hornets, and Toronto Raptors. But let's stay away from the bad teams for now. Who are the best teams in their conference? In the Eastern Conference, the Cleveland Cavaliers have won 10 straight games for the third time this year and are en route to 60 wins this year. They're led by an all-around offense held down by their twin towers, Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, the two 7-foot big men. Right behind the Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference standings at number 2 are the reigning champions Boston Celtics. The Celtics actually blew a 20-point lead to the Cavaliers earlier this week. Rounding things out in the top 3 seeds in the Eastern Conference are the New York Knicks, who are led by superstars Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. As we move into the middle of the pack in the Eastern Conference, the standings aren't too great here. We have the Milwaukee Bucks, Indiana Pacers, and Detroit Pistons, who are all in the Central Division and all at around 34 wins. Moving into the play-in tournament now, we have the 3 floundering Southeast Division teams in the Miami Heat, Orlando Magic, and Atlanta Hawks. We move down to the even more floundering Chicago Bulls in the 10th seed, and the Philadelphia 76ers and Brooklyn Nets, who are both struggling this season as well. Moving over to the Western Conference now, in the West, one team is the best, and that is the Oklahoma City Thunder. Their superstar Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been absolutely dominant for the Thunder this year and is an MVP candidate. In a shocking resurgence, the Los Angeles Lakers have now moved themselves up to the number 2 seed in the West thanks to the Luka Doncic trade that broke NBA news last month. We covered that last month if you remember. With Luka and LeBron James at the helm of the Lakers offense, the Lakers have now moved up to the number 2 seed and are on a 6-game win streak. Just behind the Lakers, only separated by a half game, are the Denver Nuggets, Memphis Grizzlies, and Houston Rockets. Moving down in the Western Conference standings, we have the Los Angeles Clippers, the Golden State Warriors, who have now moved up after trading for Jimmy Butler earlier this month, the Minnesota Timberwolves, Sacramento Kings, and Dallas Mavericks. Even below them is the Phoenix Suns sitting at the 11th seed outside of the play-in tournament. Their future is not looking so great. Moving away from basketball news and into some football news now, NFL free agency starts up next week on March 10th, so make sure you tune into the Shutter Sports Refresh next week, and we'll let you know if any big moves went down. We took a little break from basketball there, but we're right back to it as we get into some college basketball now. March Madness is right around the corner. We start things off in March with the conference championships, and then after that, the national championship, March Madness. Let's take a look at some of the bigger games of this week as we move into conference championship plays next week. Yesterday, there was a nice game between Michigan State and Wisconsin, and Michigan State ended up taking the win thanks to 19 points by Jaden Atkins and 16 rebounds by Jackson Kohler. Moving into some other games now, on Saturday, the number 1 Auburn beat Kentucky, Florida beat Texas A&M by a big margin, and Iowa State did the exact same thing to Arizona. The good close game this week was between 4-seed Tennessee and 7-seed Alabama. Mark Sears had 24 points for Alabama in this one, but it didn't matter because Jahmai Mashack for Tennessee came up clutch with the game-winning steal and basket to seal the game. And speaking of game-winning three-point shots, Michigan State, who we mentioned earlier, had an even crazier three-point game winner earlier this week. They were playing Maryland, and role player Trey Holloman took a half-court shot to take the win. You know it's March when shots like that are falling. Stay tuned next week for even more madness. Moving into some fighting news, UFC 313 will take place this weekend. The main event for this one is Alex Pereira defending his light heavyweight championship against Magomed Ankalaev. Ankalaev has had a long career and this is only his second opportunity to get a championship, so we'll see if he can get it done. Make sure to stay tuned to the Shutter Sports Refresh next week and we'll give you the results of that fight. Next up, let's take a look at the NHL standings as we get closer to playoffs in hockey as well. In the Atlantic Division, the Toronto Maple Leafs and Florida Panthers are still fighting for that top spot. The Leafs have won 5 in a row and the Panthers 3. Sneaking up behind those two teams are the Tampa Bay Lightning, who have won 8 in a row and solidified themselves as the 3rd team in the Atlantic by a landslide. In the Metropolitan Division, the Washington Capitals are still firmly in first, with the Carolina Hurricanes and New Jersey Devils right behind. In the Central Division, though, there's only one spot up for grabs as the Winnipeg Jets, Dallas Stars, and Minnesota Wild are clearly atop the division. The Avalanche are right behind with 72 points and they're sitting in 4th. And finally, moving on to the Pacific Division, the Vegas Golden Knights, Edmonton Oilers, and Los Angeles Kings are locked in and leading the Calgary Flames, Vancouver Canucks. They're all sitting at around 65 points right now. And staying on the theme of hockey, the PWHL still has 2 months to go in the regular season and things are getting exciting. Victoire de Montreal is still running the league and they are now 7 points ahead of second place Toronto Scepters. Behind the Toronto Scepters are the Boston Fleet, who are now at 31 points, and last year's champions are also sitting in 4th, the Minnesota Frost. And for our last piece of news this week, let's wrap up with some soccer. I wish I could give you guys updates on the Champions League playoffs, but they don't start until March 4th and March 5th, so come back next week and we'll let you know what happened. Instead, let's go to the 5 major soccer leagues around Europe and give you some standings updates. In England and the Premier League, Liverpool seems to have wrapped up the title, and Arsenal, Nottingham, and Man City are in the Champions League spots. In La Liga, Barcelona and Atletico have separated themselves just very slightly from Real Madrid, who's in 3rd place. In Serie A, it is similarly tight, with Inter, Napoli, and Atalanta all within 3 points of each other. Bayern Munich is still atop Bundesliga, and PSG is also still atop in Ligue 1. And that's it for this week's Shutter Sports Refresh. I hope you had a great week, and I hope you learned something today. I've been your host, Finn Noel, and you can check me out on social media right down here. Don't forget about Shutter Sports Media as well, and the writer for this episode, Lucky Roberts. Thanks for watching.